2 days after Lexington, 20,000 rebels surrounded Boston. Trapped in the city with the Redcoats were thousands of Americans still loyal to the King of England. The British Commander-in-Chief, General Gage, had asked London for 20,000 more troops to suppress the insurrection. London granted 2,000, and 3 generals, Henry Clinton, William Howe, and John Burgoyne. The rebel press noted that the ship carrying the generals to the colonies was called the Cerberus, after the mythical 3-headed dog that guarded the gates of hell. The British generals planned to attack the Americans and break the deadlock at Boston. But within 24 hours, rebel spies reported the British strategy to the Americans. The Americans decided to move first and occupy the Charlestown Peninsula. Their plan was to build fortifications above Boston Harbor, the lifeline for British supplies. The place they chose was called Bunker Hill. The man they chose to lead them was Massachusetts Colonel William Prescott. On the evening of June 16th, Prescott and more than 1,000 men moved out to fortify Bunker Hill. Instead, in the confusion of darkness, the rebels chose a lower site called Breed's Hill. The Americans labored all night on their defenses. At first light, a watchman aboard a British warship was shocked to discover that the face of Breed's Hill was crowned by a 136-foot-long entrenchment. General Clinton proposed landing 2 forces on the Charlestown Peninsula and trapping the Americans between them. Surprisingly, General Gage overruled him and prepared for a more perilous move, a frontal assault.
The decision of the British to actually storm the American defences on Bunker's Hill, or Breed's Hill as it was, may seem now rather odd, but the reason they did it, I think, was primarily psychological. The British had suffered an embarrassing, humiliating reverse on the day of Lexington and Concord. So they had to reassert the superiority of regular troops over the colonial militia.
Gage's strategy required waiting 6 hours for high tide, 6 more hours for the Americans to fortify Breed's Hill. At the rebel redoubt, an elegantly dressed patriot arrived, carrying a borrowed musket on his arm and a book of poetry in his pocket. Joseph Warren was one of the colony's most successful physicians and the leader of the Boston rebels. At dinner the evening before, he had confided to companions that he had foreseen his death on this hill, but he had no intention of ducking the fray.
These fellows say we won't fight. By heaven, I hope I shall die up to my knees in British blood.